Sup YouTube. So before I get into the video, I just want to make something clear from the start, because I know there might be some people out there that click on the video, see the thumbnail or the title of the video, and are probably going to assume that I might just be a new player with a couple hundred hours of experience in the game, and then, probably got completely shit on by some better players and is now complaining and making a video about it and ranting about it. I just want to make clear that that's not the case, and that I have more experience in the game than you probably think that I do, which is why I also think you probably should take my criticism in the video more seriously regards to KD. So the whole point of this video is basically to just address the old KD thing in Hunt, because I know there's a lot of people out there that seem to think that KD is ultimately what defines your skill in the game, and the higher KD you have, the better you are as a player. But this isn't really the case, and I'll explain why. So the way that people usually tend to think about KD is that the higher KD you have, the better you are at killing people and the more kills you can get in comparison to another player. But this isn't really the most accurate way of viewing KD, because you're not taking into consideration the fact that deaths also matter in your KD stat. So if you can just find a way to avoid dying, you're going to increase your KD even though you're not actually getting better at the game. And this is a crucial point for KD, because this is how people actually manipulate their KD, and why a lot of people have a very, very high KD, and KDs like 3 or 4 or like above that. You see these players all the time, and usually you think, oh, they must be really, really good at the game because they can kill people a lot without dying. But it's not because they're actually good at the game, it's just because they find ways of avoiding death. And the way they do that is actually quite simple. So specifically in Hunt, because you're not actually forced to engage into fights with people, what a lot of people tend to end up doing is they tend to play in a very passive form of way, where they play from further ranges and then try not to engage as much, wait for a window of opportunity to strike, and then, go for it. And depending on how passive you play, the further range you stay from actual fights and the less you engage, you're going to substantially be able to increase your KD, even though you're not actually getting better at the game. And to prove this to you, I made a Smurf account. So my Smurf account is currently number 1 on the leaderboard for KD. Now, this isn't because I'm really, really skilled and really, really good at the game. It's just because I play in a very passive and very campy way on that account, just for me to prove my point. That's how I played, and this is what the KD that I got was. But there's a lot of people out there that probably say, well, 26 KD, that's really, really extreme KD. You're basically just camping at that point. But that's exactly my point. There's no real difference between somebody that camps and plays in a very passive way, because those playstyles are basically identical. There's almost no difference between them. So if I could get a KD that's 26, how easy it is for me to maintain a KD at 4 or 5 if I chose to. How easy is it for an average player to maintain a KD above 2 or 3? That's exactly why I'm doing this or explaining this to you, because ultimately KD doesn't really say anything about how good you are at the game. It just tells you about how that player plays or what their playstyle is. It says more about your playstyle than it does about skill. Ultimately, playing in a passive way doesn't really require that much skill, since the only thing you're really doing is playing from a far range and not engaging into fights. Now, I myself am a very aggressive player, and I don't play in a passive way. Even then, I made a Smurf account, I got number 1 on the leaderboard with a 26 KD with a playstyle that I'm not at all familiar with. It just really goes to show how easy it is to play in a passive way. Now, what does require skill, however, is playing in an aggressive way, because while playing aggressively, you now have to take a lot of other things into consideration, since you're now actually engaging into fights with other people. When you play aggressively, you have to think of stuff like positioning, your movement, holding certain angles, and being aware of your opponent's positioning and whereabouts. But there's a lot of other things as well. There's just way more things to learn about the game and about how to fight in the game playing in an aggressive way. Because now you're actually playing the game and fighting people instead of staying far away and shooting at players that aren't even fighting you back. Now, I know I haven't really defined or clarified what an aggressive playstyle is, since I know there's other people out there that have different interpretations of what an aggressive playstyle is. So, But you know, there's obviously those players that stay further back and never want to get close unless they're really, really confident that they won't die. And these players, they would call themselves aggressive, but they really aren't aggressive players. When I think of somebody that's an aggressive player, I think of somebody like Lord James Delaney, Rakhta Z, Frankie, Grace Rages. These are types of players that play in a very aggressive way. And if you want to know what an aggressive playstyle is and what an aggressive player is, then I highly recommend that you go watch these people play, because you'll learn a lot from them. Now, if a lot of those players with the higher KDs played the same way as these players do, their KD would just go straight down because they have no actual experience on how to fight other people from close ranges, because they never really learned how to play the game properly by actually having a fight with other people. This is why ultimately what defines your skill in Hunt is how well you're able to fight other people by engaging them. You're never going to get good at the game by playing the way a lot of these high KD players play like, and you're never going to get good at the game because you have a high KD.